Hello friends, and welcome to an absolute beginner's guide to RimWorld. Let's say you've just bought the game, you haven't bought any of the DLC, you're just playing it for the very first time. Well, welcome. I'm here to guide you through the basics of getting started and getting to know RimWorld. And the first thing to note is that this is a story generator, not a game. So when things go wrong in this game, or this story generator, don't be upset. Just pay attention to the story as it comes and goes and enjoy it, because this is the sort of game where when you're discussing it with your friends, you'll find yourself telling amazing tales of heroism, tragedy, catastrophe, and weird coincidences that seem to crop up through this game. So, with that in mind, I'm starting with a completely naked game. I've got all of the mods, including royalty and ideology, turned off, so this is a purely vanilla experience. So the first thing you'll want to do is potentially do the tutorial, but we're just going to go for a straight start a new game. Now, by default, there are 3 scenarios that you have access to. I've got a few more because I've been playing this game quite a bit. By default, you can have 3 colonists chosen from 8, and a bunch of stuff that you start with. You can also start with a tribe of people who have a lower technical skill. You'll start with 5 chosen from 8, and some additional stuff, but a little bit less. And then finally, the other default option is the Rich Explorer, where you have 1 person chosen from 8. You automatically start with gun turrets researched and a bunch of goodies, including a very nice charge rifle, which is quite handy to keep you alive. But we're just going to go with the default crash landed. If you want to experiment further, you can go into the scenario editor and you can edit and add things. So you could add a part, you could completely randomize the game, or you could remove things or add things to your heart's content. So you might want to start with more silver, which is the default currency in the game, more packaged survival meals to get you up and running, or more medicine should you feel that you're going to have a bit of a difficult time. But we're not going to do that. Let's just start with a default crash landed game. There are 3 storytellers to choose from, and each of these storytellers has a slightly different way of generating events in the game that you're going to be able to interact with. Cassandra Classic is a gentle curve that, adds new things that slowly get harder and harder as the game goes along. She does give you breathing room between each of the events, but she keeps adding things in to make things challenging and interesting. Phoebe Chillax will give you more time between disasters and events so that you can build your colony and everything's fine, and then occasionally you'll have something that's fairly hectic that you'll need to deal with. She's generally fairly fun if you're more into a base building kind of vibe, but she will, if you put the difficulty up a little bit, she will absolutely crush you if she wants to. And then finally, Randy Random. Randy Random doesn't bother with the, okay, we're going to have raids that slowly get more and more difficult, and we're going to space that out with, interesting events like stuff dropping from the sky that you can go and pick up and add to your colony's wealth. No, it's completely random, and it could be bug raid after mech raid, after human raid, after pirate raid, and you'll get slammed. That can be very fun, and personally, that's my preferred way of playing, because it doesn't let you slip into, I guess, a comfortable, relaxed frame of mind. You have to be on your guard at all times. But to make things simple, let's go with Cassandra Classic to make things, fairly easy to get us started. Here are the difficulty levels. So peaceful is like if you just want to build. Community builder is basically the same, but sometimes threats happen. And then we can move up through the list until we get to losing is fun, which is, the difficulty level is cranked all the way up to the hardest it can possibly be, unless you want to go into custom, where you can do all sorts of tuning on the difficulty level to make things even more difficult. But for now, let's just go with something in the middle, strive to survive. And finally, the last 2 options we have here are, do you want to reload any time? So if you want to roll back to a previous save to stop something dangerous happening. And look, I would recommend that you don't do that, because dangerous and catastrophic things make the story. If you want to really challenge yourself, you can go for commitment mode, where there's no way to save and roll back. There's no auto saving. It's just when you quit the game, you save, and when you come back in again, that's where you resume. So let's carry on. The next thing is to choose what we want our world to look like. And there's an automatic seed population thing, but you can type in anything you want and it'll generate the world based on that seed. You can decide how big you want the globe to be, and 30% is generally a good sort of start. You can generate the whole planet, but personally I think that 30% is fine. It just means that essentially there's one big continent and then the rest of the planet is ocean. You can tune the rainfall to make it higher or lower. So if it's lower, then the whole place would be a desert. If it's higher, the whole place would be swamps and rainforests. The overall temperature, if it's low, then the whole planet will be taiga and ice sheets and that sort of thing. Whereas high, again, it'll be deserts, and potentially with rainfall, it'll be tropical rainforests and that sort of thing. And then population gives you an idea of how many factions or how many faction bases are going to be available. The factions that you're going to face off against are going to be Outlanders, which are generally, can be made friends with and they can be traded with. There are pirates, which will never be friendly. They will always be your enemy and they will attack you relentlessly. Tribes, depending on their type, will either be able to be traded with and made friends with, or they will raid you. And then finally, there are mechanoids, which are big, ancient, artificial life forms that will, absolutely make your life hell. And then insects, which will tunnel up out of caves, and occasionally they will fall in ship chunks and drop pods and things to mess with your day. Each of these different enemies has different traits, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. So let's generate our world. And you can see here we're only using core, ideology and royalty. We won't go into those right now because really that's a whole nother kettle of fish. So here is the default world that we've had generated, and you can see all of the different settlements that have been placed around this world and the different biomes that are available. So up the top here we have sea ice, we have ice sheets. At the top here, this is tundra. We can come further down into boreal forest, temperate forest, desert, temperate forest, arid shrublands, and so on and so forth. Now, depending on what type of start you want, you can choose a different location. So if you go into a desert, it's going to be very difficult to grow food. Temperate forest is generally fairly friendly, and you can get an idea of what each of these locations is like by looking in the terrain tab. So this location is flat, and if we zoom in, we can see that this is a flat tile. It doesn't have any mountains or hills, and it doesn't have a river or ocean next to it. This location has an average temperature of 8.5 degrees Celsius, and you can grow for 30 out of the 60 days in the year. A year on this RimWorld is 60 days. There is a 770 millimeters of annual rainfall, and we can forage for berries the whole year round, well, most of the year, and we can also graze animals, and that's another thing to look out for. So I think for a nice sort of easy start, maybe we should aim a little bit further down. Let's have a look at something like this, a temperate forest, 40 days worth of growth. This is large hills, maybe, yeah, large hills seems good. You can go for things like mountainous terrain, which has more mountains and you can dig in. This one also has caves, which can be good because you can create a base within the cave, but it can be bad because there can be bugs in there. So let's just go with some hills with no caves, and on this map we have sandstone, marble and slate stone. It's 412 meters above sea level, and let's proceed here. Next up is our character selection screen. So we have 8 characters that have been generated for us, and we can see each of these characters' stats when we look into those characters. So for example, Ray is a female who's aged 42, although chronologically she's 123, because in RimWorld, the idea of being able to be frozen for interstellar travel is a possibility, and in fact you can build crypto-sleep caskets later on, both to protect people and keep them safe if they're very seriously injured until you can get the materials together to resuscitate or heal them, or at the very end of the game, which is essentially the goal of the vanilla base game, you can create crypto-sleep caskets and build a ship with which you can escape the RimWorld. Because essentially, when we've crash landed on this RimWorld, our main goal is to get off the planet and get back to the core worlds where we can survive comfortably. Ray was a sickly child, but is now a cave explorer and has some great stats across the board. So, for example, we can see the different statistics that each person has, from shooting and melee, the combat statistics, through construction, mining, etc. Each of these statistics is very, very useful for your colony all told, and you really do want to have a good spread of skills across the board. In addition to the level of skill, which can be from 0 to 100, or more accurately, can be from nothing, like if we have a look through, Lance here is incapable of mining and plant work because of the backstory that this person has. So for example, as a private detective, growing, mining and plant cutting are things that Lance is not capable of doing. Ray, though, has great mining. It also has 2 flames here, and the flames mean that this is a burning passion for Ray. Ray, whilst doing mining, will really seriously enjoy doing that job and will gain the skill at a much higher rate, so 150%, as opposed to the default skill rate of 35%. A single passion means that you will learn at 100%. That's the passion is interested if it's a single flame. So level 4, some familiarity. Level 13 for mining, strong expert, and that can very quickly increase all the way up to 20. So we can look through the rest of our characters here and see what all of their stats are. Most of them are fairly unimpressive with the exception of Ray. We can also see any traits that these people have. So Ray has chemical fascination, which will mean that she's attracted to taking drugs. And she's also a creepy breather, which other people may find a little bit upsetting, and it may strain the social connections between her and other people in the colony. Lance is jealous and will always want to have the best bedroom, and he's also a wimp, which means that if he does take too much damage, he'll fall over and start crying. Finally, there's me, who is a pampered child. She's only 17, though her chronological age is 743 years. She's a trigger-happy masochist and is incapable of cooking. Now, if we look down at the bottom of the screen here, we're also going to see some additional information about what our overall skills are. So we can see that mining, we're doing well, and medical, we're doing well. So Lance has some great, no, is it Ray? Ray has good medical skills. Okay. And then the other 2, really social and a little bit of social and intellectual. So I think we really need to change these 2 people out. Now, I could use the randomize button to just quickly change these people and re-roll their skills, but let's look through the other people that we have. So India here, cooking and plants, that seems very valuable. So that boosts those 2 up. Ideally now we want someone with some good construction skill, who can look after the construction of our base and keep things ticking along. Now, I can't see anyone here who does. We do have someone with some good shooting, but construction, melee, and shooting are things that we don't have a lot of skill in at the moment. So let's re-roll Lance, and we'll see if we can get some nice construction, and maybe a little bit of shooting as well. So maybe, ideally, we want a double construction and some plants as well. That's not bad. Maybe let's have a look at, okay, great. So a war refugee, a colony settler, but incapable of violence is a little bit dangerous. It does leave us very, very lackluster when it comes to protecting ourselves. But in addition to this construction, we do have a good amount of sort of broad skills across the board. So I think that this is actually a relatively good sort of set of skills. Hopefully we won't need to do any hunting or defending ourselves in the short term until we can find a new person. So Freddy, India, and Ray, let's begin our story. So the game's then going to generate the map. The map is always going to be randomly generated, and because we're choosing the crash-landed scenario here, all of us awake in our crypto-sleep sarcophagi to the sound of sirens and ripping metal. You barely get to the escape pods before the ship is torn apart. Sometime later, you land on this unknown RimWorld. So, as advertised, here are our 3 people. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is press space to pause the game. The game has 3 speed levels as well as pause, so there's normal, fast, and super fast. We can see across the right-hand side here that it's spring. It is the 6th of April, May, so each of the seasons has a sort of run-together name. So April, May, June, August, September, October, December, January. They're sort of smushed together. It's currently 6H, which is 6 a.m., and it's clear, it's 3 degrees Celsius, and, well, this is my local time here because I've enabled that in the options menu. Around our people, we can see a bunch of items that have been dropped in with us. So we have a bunch of steel here, and if I double-click, I can select all of that steel. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that there's an X on each of these items. So there's a flak vest here, there's some medicine, there's a pistol, etc. The X on top of these things means that this is not allowed, and our people will not touch those items until we select these items and either click this button or select these items and tap F on the keyboard to mark them as allowed. So I'm going to go ahead and allow all of these things so that we can go ahead and collect those up. There's also a bunch of wood, which is scattered all over the place, and I believe that that's all we start with in the Crash Landed scenario. I'll be honest, it's been a long time since I played the Crash Landed scenario. When we're starting off, you'll notice that on this map there is some water elements, there's some hills that are dotted about, and a bunch of trees and vegetation and such. There's also these green things here, which are ship chunks, and these can be deconstructed to yield additional resources. For any item within the game, you can tap the information button here, and it will give you some more information about this item. A chunk of spacecraft, it seems to have been torn off either by uncontrolled re-entry forces or some kind of weapon, and it contains useful resources. From experience, that will contain some steel and some components, which are the building blocks of most of the machinery that you're going to need to build. Around the map, in these hills here, you'll see that there are different types of stone, for example, slate, sandstone, etc. There's also occasionally some walls and doors and things like that you can get into and choose to make into your own little shack. With each of these different things, when you select them, there will be a command palette here that you can either mine this stone or you can smooth the surface to make it more attractive. In addition to stone, you'll also find minerals. So this mineral with this sort of speckled brown sort of look here is compacted steel. And when mining that up, it's going to yield more of this steel that you can use to either build steel walls, like these ones here, though that seems a bit wasteful, or you can build machinery, power lines, so on and so forth. In addition to the steel, you'll also be finding compacted machinery, which when mined will yield components. These are used to make machinery as well, and guns and turrets and that sort of thing. The other materials that are available on this map, doesn't look like there's actually that many, but that's okay. We've got a good start and a good amount of steel. Actually, yes, there's some jade here, which can be used later on for bartering, and it can also be used for making furniture, statues, that sort of thing. Oh, and some more jade. Great. So the things to keep an eye on when you're looking around the map is, okay, there's some more packaged survival meals here that have fallen off course whilst we've been crash landing. And so far as minerals go, there's not a great deal, really, aside from the basic stuff. Plants that are available on the map at the moment, you'll see that there are a number of trees. These trees can be chopped down for wood, and that wood will stack like this. Wood can be turned into buildings, furniture, and basic weaponry such as clubs and bows. Chunks of stone can slowly be chipped down and turned into blocks, which you can use for building. And the other plants to be noted are heelroot. Heelroot is basically a herbal medicine that can be used to treat illnesses and wounds. And then there's berries. And these berries can be harvested up for a quick and easy food source. You'll also notice a number of animals that are on the map, which can be hunted or can be tamed and brought on board to feed your colony. The final thing that we can look at whilst glancing across the map like this is over here, you'll see that there's a rather large structure here. On all maps, you're going to find one of these structures, and when you recruit one of your people and move near it, you'll receive a warning that says Ancient Danger. As Ray draws near the ancient wall, a sense of foreboding overcomes her. She isn't sure why, but she feels that this dusty structure may contain great danger. I'm not going to show you right now what's in that structure. I'm going to leave it for you to figure out later on, because sometimes it can be good, a lot of times it can be bad. So, here we are on our map, and we need to establish our colony. Now, the first thing I think we need to do is build a building where our people can sleep, store their goods, and basically be protected from the elements, because people will get upset if they're sleeping outside or if they're sleeping, in the rain, or if they're outside in the rain. So let's go down into our architect icon here, and this is going to bring up the architect menu. This is where we build and plan out the jobs that our people are going to be engaged in. The first thing I'm going to do is build a structure, and I'm going to select wood as we have a reasonable amount of it, and I'm going to create 2 buildings. The first one is going to be like this, and that can be just a relatively simple storeroom. The second one is going to be like this, and that's going to be a bedroom. Next, I'm going to select a door, and I'm going to put a wooden door here and here to seal off the bedroom and the storage room, and allow people to move around and do what they need to do. With the items that we currently have on board, I'm going to also need a zone where we can stockpile all of those items so that things that are perishable, for example, these packaged survival meals, note that these are deteriorating because they are unroofed and outdoors. They have a hit point limit of 50, and this will slowly decrease as they're lying out in the elements. So we now need a stockpile zone, which I'm going to place in this room. And this stockpile zone is where anyone who's not building will bring all of those materials to be stored under a roof so that they don't deteriorate. Later on, we'll need to worry about perishable goods, things like food and vegetable type food and meat from animals. For those, we'll need to build a freezer. Now, a freezer isn't available when you're playing a tribal start. You'll need to work your way up to that. But it is definitely something that's available right off the bat for this colony, because we do start with the relevant technology. The next thing I'd like to build is some sleeping spots. Now, I could go ahead in the furniture section and select just a sleeping spot, which is just a spot on the ground where people are going to sleep. It is very uncomfortable and isn't the sort of thing that you'd want to, have in place for too long. The best thing to have is a bed. Now, at the moment, because I've already used all of the wood that I had stockpiled, this bed has automatically changed itself to a steel bed. And you can see that in the top left-hand corner there, it says steel bed. And if I select, it's going to say that it's going to require 45 steel to make this. Now, steel beds are a bit wasteful. So I'm going to right click and select wooden bed. And I'm going to place down 3 wooden beds for my 3 colonists. And I'm also going to put down a torch lamp, which is just a simple stick that's on fire so that people can see what's going on whilst they're indoors. Noting that I'm now out of wood, I'm going to select in the Architect the Orders menu, where we can have options like tagging a bunch of stone for mining. We can tag items to be hauled, like for example, let's haul these stone chunks out of the bedroom so that it's not quite as ugly. And we can chop wood. And this is a very important one for where we currently are. So I'm going to select all of the wood that's out in this area here. Now be careful tagging too much because it does take some time to harvest wood. And you don't want to tag, the entire map, because one of your colonists is going to then be out there chopping and chopping and chopping forever, and that can be a bit wasteful, and really you just want to keep enough wood for what you're doing at any one time. The other stockpile zone that we really do need, and that's where these chunks come into play, we'll hold that one as well actually, is a dumping stockpile zone. A dumping stockpile zone is where you place anything that you don't really want to be, keeping in your base, but it's things that you may need at some point. So stone chunks that we may wish to turn into blocks at some point, they can be stored there. The same goes for any other chunks, so steel slag chunks, for example, and corpses will be stored there as well, whilst they're waiting to either be butchered, in the case of animal corpses, or buried, in the case of humanoid corpses. So as we're proceeding, Freddy is continuing to build this place out, India is chopping down some trees, and Minerva the Warg is just mooching about and basically doing nothing at this stage. This animal is handy, and we can look at training that animal later on, but I won't go into that just yet. The next thing that you're going to need to do while this building is being constructed, or after this building has been constructed, is to have a look at your food sources. By default, you start with some packaged survival meals, which are okay to get you up and running, but we really do need to look at some additional food sources that are going to be able to keep us above ground, above water. With that in mind, under the zone section, I'm going to select growing zone. A growing zone is where you can designate an area of land that is going to be used for growing a particular crop. And there are a number of different crops available. This growing zone, I'm going to select the plant type, and I'm going to change this to rice. Rice is very quick to grow, and it's while not terribly nutritious, it does provide a very quick and easy way to get food in a hurry in the initial part of the game. Later on, you'll want to change that rice out for something a little bit more nutritious. For example, corn, which is, it takes a little bit longer to grow. So for example, if we look at rice, rice provides 0.18 nutrition and takes 3 days to become mature and able to be harvested. Corn, on the other hand, it takes 11.3 days to grow, but provides 0.4 nutrition. So day for day, it actually provides more food than rice. Now you'll note that I've also placed this growing zone down on a slightly darker piece of soil than what's available elsewhere. In the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you'll see the type of soil that's available. This soil is soil, and it provides a walk speed of 87% and a fertility of 100%. This darker soil here, I've purposefully placed my my grow zone on because this is rich soil with a whole bunch of fallen leaf litter and so on and so forth. Its fertility is 140%, and so as a result, it's going to grow the food that we plant here even faster, which is great. In addition to those two types of soil, you'll also find some stone, rough marble is here, and occasionally you'll find stony soil. Stony soil provides a fertility of 70%, and you should avoid planting on that wherever possible. But where we're currently planting, It's nice and central and relatively defensible, so I'm very happy with this location. I've also just spotted that there's some more steel there, so we can get in and mine that should we need some more. The final thing that's happening here in this building is that Freddy is going through and placing the roof on. And you can see like the corrugated tin that he's putting up as he moves his way around. You can automatically build roofing by sealing a room in. And you can actually designate further roof areas. So for example, I might want to have a small amount of roof extended out to the front there, making sure that we don't overlap our grow zone. Or, you know, around the edges like this, just to provide like a sort of a patio for our people to move around the base should they need to, without getting wet if it's raining. I'd also like this to be roofed, although that would automatically happen when this is sealed off and this is sealed off. The other thing you can do is to force ignore a roof area. So you could say, I never want a roof to be placed, remove. I never want a roof to be placed over this, and that would never occur, although that's never going to occur anyway, so don't worry. So that is the beginnings of our base. Now the next thing that we need to think about whilst the rice is being planted is getting someone up and running as our hunter. We can look into each of these people on their tabs at the bottom here, so I can see the log of what Ray has been up to and who she's been chatting to and what's been happening. I can see what gear Ray is equipped with. In this case, it's a plasteel flak helmet, a synthread button-down shirt, a flak vest, and some synthread pants. She's also carrying a packaged survival meal, which is something that your colonists will aim to do so that they'll always have one meal on their person in case they're away from the base and feeling hungry. In the social tab, we can see her relationships with her fellow colonists. We can see her skills and watch them as they increase. And we can see her needs. Needs are very important to each of your characters, and you can see behind each of the characters there's a gradient that shows what their overall mood is. If their mood is high, your colonists will continue to function and everything will be fine. But as your colonists become unhappy, you see these 3 marks here are their 3 break thresholds. Their minor break threshold at 35%, or Ray's minor break threshold, major at 20%, and extreme at 5%. When these people hit those break thresholds, and specifically the extreme break threshold, they may go on a tantrum, they may go on a sad wander, or they might have something like a food binge, or they might pick a social fight with someone else. These are things that you need to keep an eye on, because when people are breaking very frequently, it'll take a lot of time to get anything done in the colony. In order to combat the needs of your people, you need to look across the need effects as they stretch through here. So at the moment, Ray has very low expectations because we've only just started the colony and we basically have a shed in the middle of a field. She currently has initial optimism, which is something that all of your colonists will get right off the bat. It gives a +10 to mood, but it will expire after 8 days in-game. She's currently very happy because the animal that that is in the colony is bonded to her, but she is uncomfortable. She ate without a table, and oh, that's it. The other one just disappeared. So, ate without a table is one of the easiest ones for us to get rid of, and all we need to do is go into the architect, go to furniture, select a table, and place that table down in the main living area. We're also going to need some chairs, for which we can select some wooden dining chairs, and you can use the E button to rotate those chairs so that they're oriented the correct way. So let's put 2 this side and 2 this side. We've now created a slightly more impressive room. You can check the statistics of a room and how impressive it is by selecting a piece of furniture in that room and looking at the details here. So at the moment, this barracks is awful because it is impoverished, hideous, but it is somewhat spacious, though it is somewhat dirty. Each of these different each of these different aspects, we can look at improving. So impoverished, we can add more furniture, art, that sort of thing. Hideous, we can add more higher quality things and also art. Well, art is essentially where that one comes from. Somewhat spacious, that one's great, we're doing well there. And very dirty, well, at the moment the floor's made of dirt, so there's not really much we can do about that. We can, however, remove that dirt, and we can do that by going into the floors section. Let's start with a simple wooden floor, which is going to use 3 wood per tile. Or we could go with a simple concrete floor. We have a good amount of steel available, and we could use that, but it's quite ugly. So let's just go with wooden floors to get us started, and what we're going to do is click and drag across the entire building to get our wooden floors set up. Once that's all been built, assuming we have enough wood to make that happen, the building's going to look a lot better. One thing to note though, this is still a barracks. A barracks, as opposed to individual bedrooms, will always feel a little bit kinda, not nice for these people. And it's going to result in a few things like, for example, if someone gets up in the middle of the night or if someone's building, they'll interrupt the sleep of the other people. So whenever you can, start pushing towards individual bedrooms for your people to see if you can provide them with a slightly nicer living experience. The next thing that we need to worry about in an early game playthrough is power, refrigeration, and cooking. Because while we have food on its way, and we have packed survival meals stockpiled, we do need to plan a meal source. So the next thing we're going to set up and build is 2 things. One is going to be a kitchen, and one is going to be a refrigerator. We're also going to build a door that leads into the kitchen from the stockroom and from the kitchen to the refrigerator. In addition to that, we'll need to power this room. Items to power your base are found under the power screen. We're going to start out with a simple wood-fired generator, though I could select a wind turbine. Wind turbines are very powerful, and they do provide more power than a wood-fired generator. However, they are reliant on the amount of wind that's available on the map, and they will be blocked. So if you place a wind turbine here, these trees will actually block the effectiveness of the turbine. A wood-fired generator is a really good early game, simple way to get some power up and running where you need it. Power conduits allow you to connect your generator to where the power is needed. So we're going to put a line of power up here and then across the back wall of the refrigerator. And then in temperature, we can add a cooler. This cooler is going to cool this room down, which is where we're going to store our food. Finally, for food production, we can go into the production menu and we'll need 2 things. First, a butcher's table. Now, I'm going to place this in the freezer, but it will receive a negative penalty for being in a room that's too cold. Basically, if the room is too cold or outdoors, then your people will be maybe wearing gloves while they're butchering, and that's going to get in the way of them being able to butcher effectively. I could produce a fueled stove, which runs on wood, but because I'm building a wood-fired generator, I can just place down an electric stove. And this electric stove is going to allow us to cook food rather efficiently. So, the trees are being chopped down here and India is working very hard. In addition to those trees, I'd also like India to harvest up some berries. There are a number that are available within the radius of our base, so I'm just going to scroll out, double-click, and then select Harvest. Selecting Harvest on any plants will automatically select any that are ready and fully grown and mark them to be harvested for their fruits. Any that are not ready will not be marked to cut. The other option is to cut plants, which will destroy the plant entirely. Be wary of this, because berry bushes can't be manually replanted. So, now that our butcher table has been completed, we can select this, which is the Bills tab. Each production table has a Bills tab where you can inform your people what that table should be doing at all times. In this case, I want this butcher table to butcher creatures, and we're going to do that forever. So whenever we have a creature that is stored within our freezer, it will be butchered up into meat. The electric stove, I'm going to change the bills on this, and I'm going to say add bill and cook simple meal. There are multiple types of meals that are available, ranging from simple, which simply requires 0 nutrition? That doesn't make sense. It requires a very small amount of nutrition and a very small amount of work. This can be meat or vegetarian, and by default, this meat section will automatically untick meat that your people don't generally like to eat. So insect meat, for example, is extremely unappetizing, and human meat is, humans generally dislike cannibalism. There are some, however, if they have a cannibalism trait, who will require human meat. And that's something to keep your eyes out for. So in this section, I'm going to say, instead of do X times where X is 1, I'm going to say do until you have. This means that we're always going to aim to have 10 meals in our colony, which our people can eat. As that's happening, we need to start thinking about hunting. So if I pull up my work schedule here, I can see the different jobs that are available in the base. By default, these jobs are ticked or unticked. So for example, Freddy will not perform doctoring work. Even though Freddy has a skill of 5, we're going to leave that work to Ray, who has a skill of 9 and a double passion. We can also sort to see who has the highest skill in each of these talents. So for example, Ray, because of her shooting and animal skills, is the best person when it comes to hunting. If you want further control over what these skills are, you can check the manual priorities button and say, okay, well, I actually want growing to be a higher priority for India. So India is going to skip all of these level 3 skills, perform growing tasks first, then work her way through the rest of the list and then come back to the top of the list where she will then firefight, patient, etc. But I'm going to leave these as automatic for the time being, because with 3 people in the base, you don't really need to worry about that too much. Let's also select these chunks here to be hauled out of the base, because they're kind of ugly. So the next thing I'd like to do is move the food from the main stockpile to the refrigerated stockpile. What I'm going to do is select the storage option here, which will bring up the list of all of the things that are available and allowed to be stored in the main stockpile zone. I'm going to untick the foods section entirely, or I could just untick raw food, but let's untick all of those foods for the time being. Then we're going to create a new zone in the fridge, and we're going to change this by selecting clear all and only foods. In addition to storing things in this way, we can have multiple storage locations for foods, where we could say, okay, well, I have this section here, which is set to store food. It also has a priority of normal. In addition to that, I might want to have a stockpile right here next to the table, which is only for meals and is a priority critical. This means that there will always be meals stored next to the wooden dining room table. Actually, before India gets here, let's change this storage from meals to all meals except for packaged survival meals. We'd like our people to be eating the best possible meals here. So, these simple meals are now next to the table, and this barracks has gone from dull or disgusting before, or whatever it was, and it's now decent. Oh, no, sorry, it's mediocre. Someone's tracked some dirt in, but that's okay. We also have a visitor. These notifications will drop down the right-hand side here to let you know that an event is occurring. So a contract miner from Hatbium is visiting. She seems to have a few items to trade. Now, Anfista is someone that we can trade with. In order to trade, you can select any of your colonists, but I generally recommend selecting the person that has the best social skill. Social skill will provide you with better pricing when you're dealing with a visiting trader. India is asleep, but I'm going to wake her up for the purposes of this demonstration. So India is going to go and talk to this trader, Anfista. Anfista has some packaged survival meals, some components, some medicine, a reinforced barrel, which is useful later on if you would like to build a high-powered weapon like a mortar, as well as an auto pistol. But we don't have any need for any of those things at this stage. When you do have a trader and you do have a surplus of silver, it's always a good idea to stockpile difficult to find things or things that are difficult to mine up on your map. So components, medicine, gold, these things are generally difficult to obtain on your local map, and trading for them is a great idea. It's also great to consider trading, considering what you can produce in order to trade for things with visiting traders. In this case, I don't want to trade with Anfista. I'm going to let her go and press cancel on that. So the final tip to get us up and running in this colony is to have a look at some hunting. Now, as there are animals out on the map, like this raccoon here, I could select this raccoon and then select hunt, or I can go into the animals tab, the wildlife tab. Animals tab is for our animals, and then wildlife is for animals that are out wild on the map. And scrolling up and down, we can see that there are a number of interesting and wacky creatures. The mega sloth, which is this big fellow here, they're great. They provide a very large amount of wool and food should you kill them. But bear in mind, there is a danger here. These two columns show the risk that if you were to hunt that animal, there is a risk that that animal is going to attack you if harmed. And that risk with a megasloth is 50%. Taming that animal and bringing it into a pen where you can then, say, if it were a cow, you could milk that cow for milk that you could then make food out of. And well, there's an inherent risk with some animals there as well. Other animals like bucks and does, they don't have any risk at all, so they're a lot safer to hunt. In this case, let's send our friend out to hunt an ibex doe. You can double click on the name here, or single click, to jump to that ibex doe, which is currently sleeping out in the field. And tomorrow, when Ray wakes up, and if we run up to level 3 speed, Ray actually, was it you that was the shooting? No, it was India. No, it was actually Ray. Okay. The other thing we need to do is equip Ray with a weapon, so we can right click on this rifle and select equip. Let's also give India a pistol, and Freddy doesn't have the ability to do anything violent, so this knife here is going to basically be not used at all. So Ray has been equipped with a weapon, and because hunting is higher up the skills tree than anything else that she needs to do, like hauling and cleaning, Ray is going to head off into the wilderness, find the ibex doe that we've tagged up, and she's going to start hunting that ibex doe. She's a ways away, but she will fire at that ibex doe until it is dead. So you can see the ibex doe getting hit. Now, when you select an item or an animal or a creature or one of your people, you can go to the health tab and see any damage that creature is taking. So Ray at the moment has no damage and her health is totally fine. Oh, well, the doe just left the map, which is a bit of a shame. We'll have to designate a different animal up, so maybe let's get some bucks and does harvested up. So Ray's now going to go and hunt a buck, which is miles and miles and miles away, and she's going to bring that buck back to the base once it's been killed, and there we can butcher it up and turn it into food. So in addition to the simple meals that we've created, which require a single ingredient, essentially, we can then start looking at further meals as we go forward. Fine meals, either using a combination of meat and vegetables, vegetarian food only or meat only, and then lavish meals, etc. So simple meals will have no mood buff, fine meals will have a small mood buff, and lavish meals will have a larger mood buff. So people will be happier when you're feeding them better meals. But lavish meals require more ingredients than simple meals. So there is a trade-off to be had there. You should only move up to fine and then lavish when you have a very secure food supply. Finally, as you move down, you can then make food in batches. So you could select to make 4 meals at the same time instead of just 1. Now, with this new build that I've created, I could go through and change manually to do until you have X and then select 10, or I can copy the settings and then, nope, you can't, never mind. That's a mod that I'm thinking of. Great. So now instead of making a single simple meal, I'm now going to make 4 simple meals until we hit 10. Finally, let's remove these 2 torch lamps because at the moment those 2 torch lamps are going to require wood to continue powering, and let's replace them with electric lamps, which we're going to connect up. That one's a little too far away, so we'll run a little power cable to connect to there, and away we go. So, this is the basics of getting started in RimWorld. We've established a food supply in that we're planting some rice, which is growing at a rate of 140%, thanks to the fertility of this soil. We've gone and gathered ourselves some wild food, which is always available out there, and you can always just go and select some berry bushes and harvest them up. And we're also... Oh, hello. Is that Minerva? No, that's a different warg who's just killed a squirrel. Opportunistic kill. That squirrel, because it was killed by a warg... Well, no. Sometimes when a predator kills another animal, it'll only eat part of it, and you can then go and grab that corpse. But in this case, it ate the whole thing. So, we now have a corpse here. India is going to go and grab that buck's corpse, haul it back in the freezer, and butcher it up. Oh, one thing I forgot to do. This freezer, at the moment, if you look on the right-hand side, is 18 degrees compared to 19 degrees outdoors. I put the cooler in, but I didn't change the temperature. So I'm going to change the temperature on this now that we have some spoilable things coming in. I'm going to change this down to, let's say, -4 degrees is the target temperature here. And slowly you're going to notice on the right-hand side, the temperature of this room dropping down. And now these are refrigerated at 1 degree Celsius. And if we let the game run a little bit further, that temperature will drop down below 0. And now this meat is frozen and it will not spoil. And this means that this meat is indefinitely going to stay fresh and ready for our people to eat. The only thing to keep an eye on is keeping your freezer powered. Oh, and watch this. This guy is also going to be very happy to come in and eat some of our food. So one of the biggest things that you need to be wary of in the early game is to manage your areas. Rename area 1 to animals. Okay. And we're going to expand the animals area, and I'm going to select all of the inside of the base, and then I'm going to manage that area and invert. So it means that animals are only allowed outside the base. Then I'm going to go into the animal screen, select that Minerva the warg is only allowed outside, and Minerva will not be able to get in and eat the food that we have. Now this is a good thing for our food, but it's not so great for Minerva. In this case, Minerva is capable of hunting on her own, but we can also, at the butcher table, produce kibble. Kibble is a very simple mixture of meat and vegetables, and that's something that we can feed to our animals. And we can do that by placing, let's say, a little section of roof over here. We can place down a stockpile zone and make that just for kibble. Clear all and only for kibble, and we'll make that important. And then to go along with that, let's give our animal a sleeping spot. Done. So there you have it. A very basic base. We have power, we have a freezer to store our food, we have a way to produce our food. The only thing that we can do from here is expand the base and expand our knowledge. From there, we can go into, under production, the research bench. A research bench can be placed anywhere. I'm going to just pop it into the barracks for now. And the research bench will allow your intellectual colony members, so in this case, Ray will be able to do some work there. In fact, if we look in the work tab, we can see that Ray is the only person that is currently designated to do research because she has a skill of 9 and a single passion. She's going to do that as the lowest possible priority, meaning that all of the other work ahead of that will be done first before she begins researching. So that's something to keep an eye on if you want research to be a slightly higher priority. I can see that a local rat has gone mad, so we can go and take care of that with Ray and India by sending them out over here. Oh, hello. It's coming in. Where is it? There it is. So let's send Ray just to here. And being the hunter, Ray should be able to take this rat on relatively easily. Or she'll completely miss and wind up in hand-to-hand combat. So this is a downside to when you have rescue rat. No, I would like to let's just melee attack rat to death. There we go. So the downside of letting things get in and close and personal is that they will sometimes attack you. So currently, Ray now has a scratch on her right leg and right foot. These will need to be treated by a doctor. And at the moment, the doctor is Ray. So Ray's going to need to tend to herself, which is a possibility. So let's go into, let's select Ray. And we're going to, under the health tab, we're going to select self-tend. So Ray is able to tend to her own wounds, as opposed to waiting for someone else to do it for her. And of course, there is no one able to do that. So she's going to go and grab some medicine and patch up her wounds and hopefully not get an infection from that rat scratch. So now that our research bench is done, we can have a look at getting some research done. So in the research tab here, you can see the research tree, which is laid out quite nicely here, and everything leads into one another. We have some basic stuff at the bottom here, like recurve bows, pemmican, which is a sort of preserved combination of meat and grains and fat, devil strand, which is a type of mushroom that yields a very strong cloth. And that then leads us through into different technologies. So we have electricity and air conditioning unlocked out of the gate. We could have actually used nutrient paste, which is a way of turning raw food directly into edible meals by putting them through a special machine. But in this case, I thought it was best to go with an actual cook's table. So further through, we can find geothermal power, and then different types of weapons, different types of turrets that we can access, and then there are gating points. So for example, in order to proceed beyond this level, we'll need to unlock microelectronics. And that gives us access to produce medicine and make televisions, etc. Beyond that, we'll need to unlock multi-analyzer, which is very expensive. And that will then lead us into a few additional things like better turrets, recon armor, and marine armor, which are very powerful types of armor. And then beyond that, the final gate is Starflight Basics, and then we can start looking at unlocking the components of a spaceship, which we can then build and use to take off and escape this RimWorld. But that, my friends, I will leave for you to explore. This has been a very basic guide to getting you up and running with a nice, functional little base, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Friends, thank you very much for watching, Let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to dive deeper into any into any topics that I may have covered here today. And I do hope that as you're playing RimWorld, you enjoy yourself. And remember, it's just a story. Thanks for watching, friends. I'll see you next time.